Hello. Okay, so in previous weeks we've talked about dreaming and planning, setting off on our adventure. We've talked about the people that we met on the way and the importance of journeying together. And today we're thinking about what we learn on the way and the importance of the journey. The journey is just as important as the destination. But it doesn't always turn out as you might have expected it to. And so, as Graeme has already said, we did quite a bit of planning, and I've brought my backpack because it's a bit of a security blanket, so I'm just going to put that on for a minute. Okay, so we geared ourselves up. We did lots of research. We found out what we'd need to take with us, what we needed to know. The straps are a bit loose. And we read our guidebook, which was really important and really useful. Now, I'm going to read you a little bit, because we sat at home reading our guidebook, on the sofa with the telly. Okay, so here's a little bit, and it's talking about when you first see like Loch Lomond and you've got a nice long walk around Loch Lomond. Okay. This is the first 7 miles of interesting walking along the bonny banks of Loch Lomond. There are no major climbs through the well-maintained path. It rises and falls many times as it meanders through beautiful, re-established native woodland, punctuated by rocky coves, tiny beaches. And we read on and we thought, this is fantastic. We can't wait for this. So, while we were waiting and planning, we did our walking. I'm going to pick up the other mic for a minute, because I'm good at... There we go, okay. So we did our practice walking. I walked like this, and Graeme started over here. And he walked a bit like this. And every now and then I stopped, and I waited, and stopped, and he caught me up, and then off we go again. Now, what we found was that actually, walking 12 miles is not too bad. When you put your pack on, makes a bit of a difference. Your feet suddenly start hurting again. So you have to practice with the weight on your back. So we did that, and that was fine. 12 miles in a day, we'd drop Amy off at school, and off we'd go, and she had after-school club once a week, so we didn't have to be back till 4:15. So we had from 9 o'clock till 4:15 to do our 12 miles. Occasionally, more than occasionally, I had to run the last half mile to get back in time, but anyway. But what we found when we actually got to Scotland was that our 12 miles of walking in Essex, which is rather flat and rather dry, did not really prepare us anything like for Scotland, which is really not flat and really not dry. So it's a bit like having to climb all the way up here. There we go. I mean, it goes on and it goes on and it goes on, and you're getting wet and it's windy. And it's cold. Yeah. And I'm making it sound like it was awful, and it wasn't awful. It was pretty hard. Bits of it were awful. But I'd do it again tomorrow, because I just loved it. But the journey was not as we'd envisaged it. It was not anything like we'd envisaged it. It was much, much harder. And the journey of life very rarely plays out as we planned. We can make our plans, and we can do some research, and we know God is with us. But it's not easy. Not by any stretch of the imagination, it's not easy. And so walking the West Highland Way, it taught us lots of things. It taught us that actually nature is just amazing, and there is so much to enjoy, even in the rain. But it also taught us that it's very easy actually to come to the end of yourself. And one particular day, I remember it so well, we'd already been walking, I don't know how long it was, probably 5 miles. And it wasn't really, really wet, but it was looking like it could be really, really wet at any point. And Graeme had had enough, and I'd had enough of waiting around. We just walk differently, you know, it's not a criticism, we're just different. But we got to this point in the day, it was around lunchtime, but we hadn't stopped to eat, because we knew we had a long way to go. And in our practice walks in Essex, we were almost getting to 3 miles an hour. And if you look at your map at the beginning of the day and you think, I've got 14 miles to do, 3 miles an hour, no problem. Well, on this day, for 1 hour, we covered 1 mile. And then the rain started. And I was hungry and I was cold. And we had another 8 miles to go. And I was ready to jack it in. I'd had enough. Graeme had had enough. How can we possibly get the next 8 miles? But we were in the middle of nowhere. There was no road. We had no choice. We had to get to our destination for that day. And so we pushed through. I had a cry and some food. And we kept going, and we did pick up speed for a bit, and we did get to our destination. And the lady in the B&B opened the door, and she showed us through to the conservatory, and she said, just have a seat down there for a minute, I'll show you to your room later. Here's a cup of tea, and there's some flapjacks. My goodness, they were enormous. The biggest flapjacks you have ever seen, and I managed 2. They were a godsend, they were fantastic. But life can be like that. And it equipped us, walking the West Highland Way, it equipped us because we knew that actually when life was really, really tough like that, we could persevere. And we could keep going. And I wanted to read from it wasn't Romans, it was Hebrews 12. And I'm going to read from the Message version. And it's all about mountains, and it's about the people that we journey with, and about the people who've gone before. It's quite a long chapter, so bear with me. The previous chapter has just finished talking about the heroes of the faith, the people who've gone before, and everything that they have found out about God, really. So here we go. Do you see what this means? All these pioneers who blazed the way, all these veterans cheering us on. It means we better get on with it. Strip down, start running, and never quit. No extra spiritual fat, no parasitic sins. Keep your eyes on Jesus, who both began and finished this race we're in. Study how he did it, because he never lost sight of where he was headed. That exhilarating finish in and with God. He could put up with anything along the way, cross, shame, whatever. And now he's there in the place of honour, right alongside God. And when you find yourselves flagging in your faith, go over that story again, item by item. That long litany of hostility that he ploughed through. That will shoot adrenaline through your souls. In this all-out match against sin, others have suffered far worse than you, to say nothing of what Jesus went through. All that bloodshed. So don't feel sorry for yourselves, or have you forgotten how good parents treat children, and that God regards you as his children? My dear child, don't shrug off God's discipline, and don't be crushed by it either. It's the child he loves that he disciplines. The child he embraces, he also corrects. God is educating you. That's why you must never drop out. He's treating you as dear children. This trouble you're in isn't punishment, it's training. The normal experience of children. Only irresponsible parents leave children to fend for themselves. Would you prefer an irresponsible God? We respect our own parents for training and not spoiling us, so why not embrace God's training so we can truly live? While we were children, our parents did what seemed best to them, but God is doing what is best for us, training us to live God's holy best. At the time, discipline isn't much fun. It always feels like it's going against the grain. Later, of course, it pays off handsomely, for it's well trained to find themselves mature in their relationship with God. So, don't sit around on your hands. No more dragging your feet. Clear the path for long-distance runners so no one will trip and fall, so no one will step in a hole and sprain an ankle. Help each other out and run for it. Work at getting along with each other and with God, otherwise you'll never get as much as a glimpse of God. Make sure no one gets left out of God's generosity. Keep a sharp eye out for weeds of bitter discontent. A thistle or two gone to seed can ruin a whole garden in no time. Watch out for the Esau syndrome, trading away God's lifelong gift in order to satisfy a short-term appetite. You well know how Esau later regretted that impulsive act and wanted God's blessing, but by then it was too late, tears or no tears. Unlike your ancestors, you didn't come to Mount Sinai, that volcanic blaze and earth-shaking rumble, to hear God speak. The ear-splitting words and soul-shaking message terrified them, and they begged him to stop. When they heard the words, "If an animal touches the mountain, it's as good as dead," they were afraid to move. Even Moses was terrified. No, that is not your experience at all. You've come to Mount Zion, the city where the living God resides. The invisible Jerusalem is populated by throngs of festive angels and Christian citizens. It's a city where God is judge, with judgments that make us just. You've come to Jesus, who presents us with a new covenant, a fresh charter from God. He is the mediator of this covenant. The murder of Jesus, unlike Abel's a homicide that cried out for vengeance, it became a proclamation for grace. So don't turn a deaf ear to these gracious words. If those who ignored earthly warnings didn't get away with it, what will happen to us if we turn our backs on heavenly warnings? His voice that time shook the earth to its foundations. This time, he told us this quite plainly, he'll also rock the heavens. One last shaking from top to bottom, stem to stern. The phrase, one last shaking, means a thorough house cleaning. Getting rid of all the historical and religious junk, so the unshakable essentials stand clear and uncluttered. Do you see what we've got? An unshakable kingdom. And do you see how thankful we must be? Not only thankful, but brimming with worship, deeply reverent before God. For God is not an indifferent bystander. He's actively cleaning the house, torching all that needs to burn, and he won't quit until it's all cleansed. God himself is fire. And that chapter is about the journey, it's about life, and it's about mess. It's about how out of control life can be, and I don't know about you, but I like to be in control. I'm not really big on rules, I quite like rules, but I like to know what's happening, what might happen. I like to be prepared. one of the reasons I like to be on time, and I find it tricky to be late. But life doesn't always turn out like that. But when we fix our eyes on God and not on our situation, it can help. But sometimes that's a really tricky thing to do, and sometimes life is just too tough. And I don't know how much any of you know about our backstory in the last 10 years of our life, but there has been a lot of pain, and we have lived with a lot of violence in the home, and we have not felt safe. And that's tough. When day in, day out in your home, you are feeling vulnerable and there seems no way out. And I spent a long time going out for walks, because walking helps me and I had to get out of the house. But I would go out for walks and I would shout at God. Now, I don't think there's anything wrong with shouting at God, and God He wants us to tell Him how we're feeling. But the mistake I was making for a long time was that I would go out and I would walk fast, and I would walk hard, and I would tell God what was going on, and have you not seen what she said to me this morning? And did you see she threw that? And that nearly hit me. And what if I'd forgotten to lock the knives away when I finished cutting the stew this morning? What is going on? Why are you not rescuing me from this mess? And I walked and I screamed at God, and I got back home and it all started again. And God did not change our situation. And it didn't become easier. But I was sitting with my spiritual director one morning, and I was explaining all this to her. And she looked at me very quietly and she said, "Tracy, when you feel in danger in your home, where is God? How do you connect with God?" And I thought, you must be joking. When I've got kids screaming at me, threatening me, I don't know what's happening next. How on earth do you expect me to connect with God in that moment? And she looked at me and she said, "I want you to go practice. Practice when you're not in that space. Practice and work out how you connect to God and how you hear God. And when you found that, you need to work at building that in and using that when you are in danger, when you're feeling threatened." And where did you go with that? I kind of looked at her and she's like, "Okay, time's up. That's your hour. Off you go. I'll see you in 6 weeks. Hope it goes well." And I did a bit of reading. And what I decided to try was making the sign of the cross, because that was simple and that was easy. And so I practiced that when things were a bit calmer. And I practiced getting my head in that space where, okay, I can connect to God in a simple movement and breathe. Yes, I know God is with me. And it did help. And it did help in the middle of those horrendous situations. And it didn't change what was happening. but it meant that I was aware that God was with me, right beside me. And it meant that God wasn't at the other end of the universe. It meant that he was right with me. And when the Bible says, in him we live and move and have our being, it means it. And yes, God is everywhere. But I have found that actually God is deep inside me in a quiet place. And that is my security. I'm not abandoned. And I want to read you something I wrote yesterday. I came just for the morning yesterday. Oh, I forgot I still had that on. And moving out of that situation and moving to Trowbridge and living in this house where there is no fear and no danger has given me time to repair a little bit, time to look back and say, God was with me in that. So here we are. I don't know that this will make any sense to you, but I used yesterday morning to try and process a bit of this. Because when you're in this situation, you can't. It's too full on. So here we go. Coloured by bruises, lit up by shame, rejected by loved ones. You know my name. Pitied by onlookers and trapped in a game, taunted by hemlock. You know my name. Years in this dungeon, thrown keys of dismay, lost and despairing. You know my name. Life is relentless, joy a distant memory, hope's been extinguished. You know my name. My heart did not choose this, my body recoils, I'm fading and falling, and yet I am yours. You know my name. You do not abandon me, though I struggle to see. You're here right beside me, and so I am free. I'm free to seek beauty, and free to be real, and free to be cherished, and free to discover the depths of your love despite my circumstances. I long for release, for my soul to find peace in your love. You know my name. And so as we think about the journey, and our journeys are different, but some of it we walk together. And always God walks with us. But fear is a powerful thing, and fear can tell us that actually whatever we're going to try next is not going to work. And fear can tell us that why are we bothering? Fear can tell us that the journey is not worth walking and the destination not worth getting to. And we have a choice to make. The Bible tells us that perfect love casts out fear. And there's a song that we sing here a lot, and I love it. But I have to admit that I changed the words. God, I look to you. I won't be overwhelmed. Give me vision to see things like you do. God, I look to you. You're where my help comes from. Give me wisdom. You know just what to do. And it's a great song. And I love the words. But do you know what? I can't sing them because I am constantly overwhelmed. And that's okay. It is okay. songs sing, God, I look to you. I am constantly overwhelmed, but give me vision to see things like you do. God, I look to you, and you are where my help comes from. Give me wisdom. You know just what to do. And this journey that has been very painful and very long has taught me that actually God is closer than a brother, closer than a friend. And it has taught me that my faith is real in any situation, in any circumstance. And if my faith is only real when life is easy and going to my plan, and I'm walking next to Loch Lomond and it's a level path, and the birds are singing and it's not raining and there's space to put my hammock up. On those days, if God is real, absolutely. Thank you, God. But God needs to be real in the rain and the storm when I'm losing my footing. Otherwise, my faith is meaningless. I'd like us to just listen to a song from Francesca Battistelli. It's called The Breakup Song, and it's on the video. And it's about fear having that power over us, and actually we make that decision to let go and to listen to God's words about who we are and whether we can stand firm or not. So we'll listen to the video. If we just take a few minutes quietly just to reflect and ask God to show us where He is. What's holding us back on our journey with Him? What do we need to give up? Who is God asking us to walk alongside? Father God, thank you that you are just as real in the pain of life and the mess of life as you are on those sunny days when we feel your love without any hindrance. God, help us to look to you, to see you walking beside us and to take our strength from you, no matter what else is going on around us. And most of all, thank you that you know what life in this world is like, that you have been here, that you have walked it, and you have faced criticism and abandonment. You've been betrayed. You've been misunderstood. And you did that for us.
would you keep speaking to us as we go in to the rest of this week? That we would learn to seek you out. In whatever way works for us, that we would find you in the chaos of our lives. Amen.